Under Article 2 of the Uniform Commercial Code, or UCC, which applies to contracts for the sale of goods, including growing crops, the goods and delivery must conform to the contract in every respect. Consequently, if the goods or delivery fail to conform to the contract, the buyer may accept them, reject them, or accept some of them and reject the rest. In the 2009 case of Panike and Sons Farms versus Smith, the Idaho Supreme Court considered whether the perfect tender rule applied in a case involving a contract for the sale of onions. Panike and Sons Farms was a corporation that grew crops, including onions. Four Rivers Packing Company was a corporation that purchased onions from growers and resold them nationwide. Randy Smith was the general manager of Four Rivers. In January of 2006, Four Rivers contracted to buy 25,000 hundredweight onions from Panike. The contract provided that Four Rivers could choose the fields in which the onions were grown. Also, the contract required that the onions be 75% 3-inch minimum field-run onions. In August of 2006, Smith informed Panike of the fields from which it wished to receive the onions. Panike told Smith that it wouldn't deliver the onions from those fields because they were larger and of a different variety than what was contractually required. A few weeks later, Four Rivers sent a letter to Panike reiterating that it would designate the fields from which the onions were to be delivered and sent a follow-up letter designating the specific fields. In October, Panike attempted to deliver 2 truckloads of onions to Four Rivers. When Panike arrived, Smith's wife, who was part owner of Four Rivers, asked Panike whether the onions were from the specified fields. When Panike stated they weren't, Smith's wife rejected the delivery. Subsequently, Panike sued Smith and Four Rivers for breach of contract in state district court, arguing that the onions it attempted to deliver conformed to the contract. In response, Smith argued that the contract specifically allowed it to designate the fields from which the onions came from. Following a bench trial, the court found for Smith, concluding that Panike failed to deliver the onions in conformity with the contract and that Smith was entitled to reject delivery. Panike appealed to the Idaho Supreme Court.